Hello, everybody. This is the pre-lab mini lecture for the Identifying a Mystery Substance lab using chemical and physical properties. So the first thing I want to talk about is how scientists operate. And basically, you can condense any scientific experiment into two parts: studying known substances through some methodology, and then using what you get from those known substances, those properties, that data, and using that same methodology to test an unknown substance, and then figure out whatever data, identity, whatever you're looking for that experiment of your unknown. As a very simple example, if we were provided a grapefruit, an orange, a lime, and a mandarin, and we're told, classify these into a singular group, and then call that group citrus fruits. So basically, what are the characteristics of citrus fruits? We could look at all of these and tell that they have a textured skin with a waxy appearance. If we open them up, all of the fruit is segmented. If we were at home, not in a lab setting, and we were to taste them, they all have a slightly acidic taste. If you're in a lab setting, you absolutely do not taste any samples, any chemicals, any fruits, anything. The moment it comes into a lab space, it is considered contaminated and should not be anywhere near your mouth. And if we smelled all of these fruit samples, they all have a very similar smell to them that we can call citrus scent. And so these four characteristics are what, after observing these knowns, we can identify as citrus fruit characteristics. If we were then handed an unknown fruit sample and told we needed to classify that, we could do the exact same thing. We look at it, notice it has a textured skin, has that same waxy appearance. We open it up, the fruit is segmented, not in a lab setting, but if we were to taste it, it has a slightly acidic taste, and it has that same citrusy smell as our four known fruit samples did. So at this point, we could conclusively identify this as a citrus fruit sample. Now, what specific type of citrus fruit or anything more specific than that at this point, we don't have information for, but we could perform subsequent experiments. And that's scientific research in a nutshell. So the two major types of properties we're looking at today are physical properties and chemical properties. Physical properties are those that can be measured or observed without chemically changing your compound. The easiest ones to think about are color, density, what state of matter it is, mass, volume, size. All of those you can just look at or pick it up and go measure the mass or the volume, and you've done absolutely nothing to it except picked up your sample. You haven't changed it in any way. But you can do some other tests that still measure physical properties. For example, melting point, boiling point, and sometimes solubility in liquids can be a physical property. Melting point and boiling point especially, here's how, even though it's changed. So it appears, at least. If you take an ice cube is solid water, and its chemical formula is H2O. So just from that, we know its state of matter is solid. We could determine the rest of this, but let's not worry about that right now. If we then heat that ice cube up until it melts, it is now liquid water. Its state of matter has changed, but its chemical formula is still H2O. And so whatever temperature, 0 degrees Celsius, that it required for that ice cube to melt would then be its melting point. We kept heating up that liquid water until it boiled into steam at about 100 degrees Celsius. We could figure out its boiling point. And again, now we have steam, but its chemical formula is still H2O. Its state of matter has changed. It's now in the gaseous state, but chemically, it has not changed. One of the other ways you can normally tell if you're looking at a physical property is if it's reversible. So we could take that steam and cool it down into liquid water and then freeze that liquid water into an ice cube. We can still change it back through all of those things at the same melting and boiling point. This time it would be the condensation and freezing temperatures, but same numerical value. And we could get the exact same things without changing the water that we were dealing with at any point. So all of those are physical properties. And there's a whole bunch more of physical and chemical properties that there's a video and a few slides for you guys to watch to go through and see some other examples. But these are the main ones we'll be dealing with in this course. Chemical properties, on the other hand, are those that you can only determine when the chemical composition has changed. How do you know if the chemical composition has changed? Usually, chemical changes that are associated with chemical properties will be evident through a change in color, the production or loss of heat, so cooling, the production of gas, if it bubbles and fizzes, if it produces light, if it produces an odor, precipitates, I'll get into, we're doing an experiment about it in a few weeks, but basically if you take two liquids and mix them together and get a solid, you've made a precipitate, and that has some chemical properties associated with it. So if you have irreversibly changed it, and again, usually it is an irreversible change. If you take a piece of paper and you light it on fire, as the paper burns, you're going to form light, you're going to create heat, you're going to usually create some gas, the color is going to change, it's going to turn dark gray or black. What you're going to be left over with is ash. It's not paper anymore. You can't turn that ash back into paper. And so all of that is indicative of a chemical change associated with the chemical property of flammability. So here's the video. The slides should be uploaded. You guys can access those to watch the video. I will say the narrator is a little monotone, but it gives you a lot of examples and visual representation of these different physical and chemical properties because they actually test a lot of them. So a brief outline of what we're doing in this experiment. You guys can watch the actual experimental video where I'm in lab performing these as one of the other videos that's up here. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to test all of our known substances. We have some known solids and some known liquids, and we will look at the individual knowns by themselves to figure out what do they look like. Do they have any similar characteristics? Is there anything different between each of them that we could use to identify our unknown? And then we'll start mixing them together and make every combination of solid and liquid that we can and see what happens. That's where we're going to start seeing our chemical properties. And most of those won't do a whole lot, as you guys will see in the video. So what we're going to do is really bring out some additional chemical properties by adding something called red cabbage extract. Red cabbage extract is an acid-base indicator. I'm not going to go too much into that today. I'll talk about it in a lot more detail later in the semester when we start dealing with acids and bases. But basically, we're going to add this red cabbage extract to all of the combinations, and we're going to start getting different colors. And those colors are really what we can use to identify our unknown. So once we've measured all of our knowns, solids and liquids, we'll do the exact same thing with the unknown. We'll look at it by itself initially, see if it's got any characteristics we could use to identify it. And then we'll mix it with all of our liquids the exact same way we did with the known samples. We'll write down any observations we have from that. We will then add the red cabbage extract to it and get a whole bunch of pretty colors. And with all of that data, with all of those physical properties, what does it look like originally? All of the mixing properties, all of the colors that it turns with the red cabbage extract, you should at that point be able to conclusively identify your unknown as one of your known solids. And that's everything for this experiment. And you guys can go ahead and watch the experimental videos that'll really get into me doing that, and you'll see all of the data from there.